we're going to go ahead and get started. So I want to welcome everyone to another edition of the Arkansas Alumni Association's Lunch and Learn series. My name is Mary Kate Harrison, and I am the Executive Projects Coordinator for the Alumni Association, and we're so glad to have you join us today for another special presentation. And today it is from Dean Kim Needy of the Graduate School in International Education, and she will be joined by Cecilia Grossberger-Medina. She is one of the members of our Arkansas Alumni Association National Board of Directors. So before we begin, I want to ask everyone if you please keep yourself on mute. That way we can hear Cecilia and Dean Needy as best as possible throughout the presentation. And we'll have some time for question and answer at the end of the presentation. If you want to, you're more than welcome to write some questions in the chat as they come up, and we'll address those at the end. But now I'm going to introduce Cecilia. She is from Fayetteville and is the assistant, she lives in Fayetteville now. She's the Assistant Director of Marketing and Communications for the New Student and Family Programs at the University of Arkansas. So we're glad to have her on staff here at the U of A. She is a native of Bolivia and has lived in Fayetteville since 1999. She's married to Amilcar Medina, and they have 3 children, Rodrigo Medina Grossberger, Brenda Nicole Medina Grossberger, who graduated in 2016 and then in 2019 with her master's. And then we also have, she has Camila Alejandra Medina Grossberger, and she earned her master's degree in communication from the University of Arkansas. So we're really glad that she has a lot of Razorbacks in her family. She's also one of the founders of the Latino Alumni Society and is currently the president of the society. She's a member of the Staff Senate and an annual member of the association. Cecilia, like I mentioned, serves on the Arkansas Alumni Association Board of Directors and serves as a diversity ambassador and a vital resource for the Office of Diversity and Inclusion here at the U of A. Her expertise is utilized for, but not only limited to, diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives for faculty, staff, and student-related groups. So we're really glad to have Cecilia with us today. Thank you, Cecilia. Oh. Do we have her?
Sorry.
There you are.
I was obeying your mute yourself. Hello. Hola a todos. Good morning. Buenos días. Good afternoon. I'm super excited to be here. And we have an amazing person. We'll be sharing her stories. And when I say amazing, I mean it. You're going to learn about the graduate school and international education, what they did during the spring semester. It was awesome, and what their plans for the fall semester during the pandemic. Dr. Kim LaScola Needy is a professor of industrial engineering and serves as the Dean of the Graduate School and International Education at the University of Arkansas. She received her BS and MS degrees in industrial engineering from the University of Pittsburgh and her PhD in industrial engineering from Wichita State University. She previously held an academic appointment at the University of Pittsburgh and served as the industrial engineering department head at the University of Arkansas. Prior of her academic appointments, she gained industrial experience while working at PPG Industries and Boeing Company. The Needy's research interests including engineering management, engineering economic analysis, sustainability in engineering, and integrated resource management. She has co-authored over 150 papers and has been funded on 36 different research grants from different agencies. She's a member of many professional engineering societies. She's heavily involved in local nonprofit work and is a licensed professional engineer in Kansas. Although Dean Needy is at the University of Arkansas alumni, her husband, eldest son, both are alumni. A rumor has it that her youngest son will be heading to the Hill in fall 2020. She experienced the campus transition during the last spring due to COVID-19 from the perspective as a parent and also an administrator. She loves teaching, loves working with students, avid runner, and never miss since college the yearly 5K charity run in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Excellent cookie baker. She tries to keep with her Italian heritage. She has written chapters for textbooks, received 20 plus professional awards, and it's a loving aunt and grand auntie. Please welcome Dean Needy.
Thank you so much, Cecilia. It is so exciting to see all these faces of friends and alumni and colleagues. It really means so much. I hate to change my view of the screen, but I think I'm going to have to put up a PowerPoint slide or two. So thank you so much for being here today. Let me share my screen. We'll get that up and running.
Under Vincent's leadership, and I just wanted to name that reality.
Okay, I'm going to ask, can you all see my screen, my title screen? Yes, okay, great. Well, as Cecilia has talked about, my discussion today is about supporting graduate and international students in a pandemic. If you had asked me, would I be talking about this 6 months ago even, I would say, what are you talking about? But I really got to experience this as an administrator and as a parent who had a student here at the University of Arkansas who was finishing up their senior year, their final semester. So I have both of those perspectives. And you may be interested to know that the Graduate School in International Education was really one of the first units on campus that was called into action when the pandemic began to spread into the United States because of our study abroad function. And so I'll explain that here in a little bit of detail. So we have a very, very complex and broad mission here at the University of Arkansas. So we're the Graduate School in International Education. So there's a few big chunks. So the graduate school here does things that you might expect. We recruit students, we admit students. We have an office that supports our graduate students once they're here. We have an office that provides fellowships and program support for our students. We support the students with registration, graduation, and commencement. So every May we have a graduate commencements, and then in December we hold all campus commencements. But the graduate school is in the middle of all of the planning for that. On the international education side, not everyone understands, but we have responsibility at both the undergraduate and graduate levels for international students. And so that includes the recruitment and admission of international students. We have an office that supports them when they're here, the International Students and Scholars programs. And I see some of you who are volunteers and helping with that programs through things like our iFriend program, et cetera. But this is the unit that provides support. This becomes a family unit and strong kind of welcoming unit that helps our international students adjust. Okay, study abroad and international exchange. I'm going to get into this in a little bit more detail, but we have approximately 1,100 of our students, primarily at the undergraduate level, that study abroad all over the world. And so our unit supports those endeavors. And then sponsored and special student programs. So this includes students that are sponsored by their government to come and study at the University of Arkansas at both the undergraduate and graduate levels, and also special programs. So we have programs where we may bring in pre-college students and prepare them for college readiness as they, and some of them come to the University of Arkansas, some may not. We also have 6 graduate interdisciplinary programs. So these are programs that are between 2 or more colleges. And these are some of our strongest programs. We have about 325 students studying those programs. And these programs, our cell and molecular biology, for example, hosts the largest number of doctoral students in that program here at the university. We have a center in Rome that's connected to our international program. And some of you may be familiar with that. I know John Scher's on here, and he and Trudy have traveled to our Rome Center before. So that's pretty exciting. And then we have a unit called Spring International Language Center. And Spring is an external entity, but a very strong partner that we've worked with for about 28 years. And they provide intensive language training and cultural training for our incoming students to get them ready for their program of study. And then we have a unit called Testing Services that provides numerous different tasks supporting not only our campus, but also the community. So here are some facts and figures to, again, put this into context for you. So let me begin here. We have in fall 2019, we're going to have an incoming class, but we had 4,170 graduate students that were enrolled here at the University of Arkansas. We have 1,408 international students, and that is split at about 53% that are at the graduate level and the remaining at the undergraduate level. And these are coming from 115 different countries from across the globe. These students bring in a lot of, they make up a large percentage of our students. So 18% of our international 18% of our graduate students are international students studying in 130 different programs. And our graduate students also increase the diversity of our campus, representing 21% from underrepresented areas. We're also work very closely with graduate students as assistants, assisting our faculty in the teaching and research mission. So we have over 1,600 graduate assistants in various different roles across campus, 320 doctoral fellows, 55 MFA fellows, and these fellowships provide much needed support to supplement and enhance graduate assistant stipends, allowing us to recruit really the best and brightest from across the globe. And we have about 60 Fulbright scholars who are enrolled. So you can see we add a lot of diversity and a lot of breadth of interest in areas really across the entire campus. So let's talk about February 2020, when this really all began for us. We had about 125 students that were studying abroad. And so, as I mentioned, our unit initially got involved with this because as things began to spread from China and then on into Europe and Italy and in Spain, for example, we were faced with this very, kind of pending problem of what to do. And it became pretty clear that we needed to bring our students back home. And this was a very difficult decision because many of the students weren't even at the midpoint of their studies where they were at. But we had students that were eager to come home, students that were ready to come home, and students that didn't want to come home. So you can imagine all of the challenges associated with that. And the decisions we were facing were not unlike every other US institution brings students back. And so this became a logistical challenge in getting airline flights, rescheduling travel, hotel accommodations, apartments, et cetera, et cetera. So the reality was that travel domestically and internationally was canceled. We had people then that were physically stranded here or physically stranded abroad. Similarly to us recalling some of our students, there were other foreign countries that wanted to recall their students, recall their people back. And sometimes this could not be done. Many of our students lost jobs and income. And so this hit our international students particularly hard because international students have many more restrictions on where they're able to work. And so when students lost jobs, that meant financial strain and being able to pay their lease on their apartments or pay for food, et cetera, or even couples and things. One member of the family might lose a job and the other didn't. And so that put a lot of financial hardships on the family unit. And the other thing that became difficult is that as the campus eventually mid-March moved to remote operations. So we never shut down. The campus never stopped. But when we started to move to remote operations, we started to also close down many of our research laboratories. And so we'll talk about that more in just a minute. So there were many, many ways that we were supporting our students at the graduate level and international students and really across the campus. And one of the ways that I just can't overemphasize is really giving students a seat at the table, having them being part of the conversation. So at the University of Arkansas, we have about 13 different COVID-related task force teams that are looking at things like communicable diseases, the academic side of COVID and what do we do, the research side of COVID, what do we do, logistics, events planning, you name it. And so on many of those teams, we have students, we have the voice of students, and we're relying on them, asking them, how is this going to impact you? Sadly, our graduate students report that many of them are food insecure. And so we recognize that we were going to be putting great strains upon the local area food pantries here on campus and within the community. And so, as you probably know, as alumni, calls went out to the community to assist, okay, to provide some of that assurance to families. We're really proud of a communication that we send out every Monday to all of our graduate students. It's called 5 Things to Know. It's loosely called 5 Things to Know because often there are 7 or 8 or 9 things to know. And so this is where we communicate with students about where they can get help, where they can get resources, whether it's medical care, whether it's psychological counseling, whether it's where the food pantries are, whether it's where to go for help. And so we send this out to students, and it's been very, very useful. As you probably know, at your companies or institutions, it seems like we can't communicate enough to people to make sure that they know where to get resources. We also were looking at extensions to our graduate assistant positions and fellowships, because what ended up happening and continues to happen is that this pandemic has slowed productivity and slowed progress down. So if a research laboratory was closed, for example, a student may not be able to gain access and complete the research and the experiments that they need to finalize their research, to write their dissertation and thesis and graduate. And so we've been advocating for extensions of graduate assistant positions and to allow students to finish their work. We also on campus have some emergency funds, and I'm going to talk more in detail about that, but these were so important. Within the Graduate School in International Education, we oversee 2 of these. One is directly for graduate students, and one is specifically for international students at the graduate or undergraduate levels. As I said, students lost jobs, and so they lost income. And so the campus came together and looked at alternative jobs for students. And so we have some students that are assisting with things like contact tracing, and we have some students that were hired to assist with helping the campus prepare to reopen here this fall. The graduate school was also very much an advocate on behalf of the campus to seek permission where possible to open up research labs so that students could finish their research. And so there was, as I said, an entire team from across the campus that worked on a research lab closure, and then how to open back up in a safe and phased way that would protect the health and safety of our faculty and staff and students while not compromising the research. And then another thing that we're doing to support our current students, we ended up bringing students home from study abroad in the spring and making the very difficult decision to cancel summer and fall study abroad programs. This was tough. We have so many students, especially that go out in the summer to study abroad. They've been saving money. They've been looking forward to this. They've been planning their academic calendar around this, but we weren't able to do it. So as an alternative, not as a substitute, but we've created some virtual internships for students to participate in to give them some exposure to international cultures, etc. And we've also are developing courses that are going to be taught by Rome Center faculty to our students here on campus this fall, as an example. So many, many things that we needed to do. So let me tell you about some specific success stories that are associated with this that really focus on things related to travel, related to kind of personal attention and addressing unique needs that students might have, whether it be housing or technology or even food. Let me tell you some things about the academic support that we provided and, again, emergency funding. So, as I said, we needed to bring back 125 different students who were all over the world. One of the first students that came back was actually studying in China. And so that was no easy task to bring that student back logistically, but our study abroad office supported that rescheduling of travel and brought the student back. But that came with a 14-day self-isolation that was required by the student. And also the tricky task of allowing the student to be able to complete their coursework now from the US instead of being in China. And this was critical not only to just continue their academic progress, but the student was a scholarship student. And so the scholarship also required that progress be made academically, so many credits be taken, and and success in those. So that was one example of where we had to help out. In addition, we had a student of Chinese origin who was studying at our Rome Center. And so in March then, when we started to bring everybody back, this student who moved out of their apartment, got a ticket, trying to get to China, got to the airport only to be denied the ability to travel back to China. And so this student was stuck in Rome. So our Rome Center faculty essentially opened the Rome Center back up to support this student and providing instruction, providing just student support, and was able to get them back into their apartment that they had left to help them finish out until they were able to get home. We had 2 Bahamian students who, when they were returning home, were going to return back to the Bahamas. They weren't permitted to do that. So we needed to bring them back to the United States. They didn't have a place to live in the United States. And if you recall, when everybody was coming back, there were quarantines, there was self-isolation. And so our International Students and Scholars Unit had to negotiate and find a place that was willing to let them live. And so through efforts and contacting Airbnb, they were able to find a place for these 2 students to live. But the students were isolated. They couldn't leave their homes. So our staff then assisted with providing meals and getting meals delivered to their homes, Part of the self-quarantine involved the students doing health assessments. So for example, they had to take their temperatures a few times every day. They didn't have thermometers, so we helped them to find thermometers. You may recall that our dormitories, many of the students moved out of the dormitories. Our international students were not able to do that for the most part. They had to remain on campus. And so we're so grateful to the campus community and housing and our Pat Walker Health Center and the dining services, et cetera, by maintaining, if you will, skeleton crews that would allow these international students who were stuck here in the US and in our housing to be able to get food, health care, and to be able to have, you know, a safe place to live. So these are some of the wonderful success stories that happened as a result in supporting our current students. Now, what about some of our new students? So what's happening there? And this is what all of our discussion is about really today as the fall semester begins in 11 more days. So one of the big challenges is that many of our international students are simply not going to be able to get here at the start of the fall semester. And this is for a variety of reasons. So as the pandemic really hit the global environment, many embassies closed. And so all of the processing of visas and things essentially halted. So although the embassies are opening back up, many of them have huge backlogs, and these students have to go through interviews, personal interviews, before they can obtain the proper credentials to be able to travel. And so in a lot of cases, they're going to get here, but they're not going to be here in time to start the semester. And there's still relatively limited availability of flights. A lot of people still aren't flying, so there aren't as many flight choices as there were pre-COVID. And we still have implemented some travel restrictions for international. So as you probably know, even recently, United States citizens were not permitted to travel into the European Union. Now that has been lifted for students, but you know, there is this concern about mobility, concern about people moving about from country to country. And so this is making it difficult, in particular for our international students to get here. And then in addition to that, many of our graduate and international students had difficulty with being able to complete standardized tests. And so if you have a student in high school, for example, you know, difficulty with taking the ACT or the SAT exam, at the graduate level, the GRE exam is an example. Many of those tests initially just shut down. Now, many of the institutions, educational testing services, et cetera, they've come up with virtual ways to do the testing. And then our international students, they, in addition to these standardized tests, they need to take language tests so that we can assess their language skills. So how are we supporting these students who are incoming? We want them to come. They may not be able to get here by the fall. So where possible, we are deferring the student enrollment until spring 2021 or later. So some of our academic programs can easily accommodate students with a start date in the fall or spring. There are some academic programs where it is more lockstep, and if you miss this fall, you will need to start next fall. But some students are choosing to get here, you know, in January, or perhaps not again till next August. We're allowing departments, to waive standardized tests. And so by utilizing holistic review processes, we're saying, okay, we will admit the student without a GRE score. Instead of using the TOEFL or IELTS tests, which are kind of our gold standards for language assessment, we're using Duolingo instead to try to accommodate students and faculty as much as possible. We're also working with faculty to provide flexibility for graduate assistant positions. And so, as you would imagine, faculty are disappointed, let's say, that a student won't be able to get here in the fall. They may have a research grant. They need to begin the research because there's a contract, there are deliverables. And so if the student that was promised the graduate assistant position is unable to get here, you know, they may think, well, I'll just offer it to someone else instead. We're advocating on behalf of those students to say, let's try to hold that. They'll be here in January. Can we wait one semester? What kind of stopgap measures do we have? Because we don't want to rescind that offer, because it's really no fault of the students that they weren't able to get here. This is a worldwide pandemic. And also, we're holding virtual programming and communications to students. And there's really a variety of those. And again, they've all gone virtual. All of us sit all day long in front of our computers like we are today, and we Zoom in, or we use some other mechanism in order to communicate and to share things. So our International Students and Scholars Office, for example, they're doing training with our incoming students on cultural expectations in the U.S. What faculty and student relationships, how do they look like in the U.S. compared to in a foreign country, so that the students are better prepared. In addition to the pandemic, you're all aware of the racial tensions within the country that were associated with the death of George Floyd. And so we are also then reaching out to our faculty, our staff, and students with training about what life is like in the South. So what is the history of race in the South, and what does that look like, and trying to provide some training. And also culturally competent classrooms for international students. So many opportunities for our incoming students to try to support them. Now, let me get to the emergency funding data. And I just want to say 2 words. Thank you. I can't thank you enough. Our students were in severe financial problems in many cases. And I don't know if you realize, but across the United States, and Arkansas is no different, a major concern among students at the undergraduate and graduate level is mental health and well-being. And a large contributor to the mental strain on our students is financial instability. And so we've raised a lot of money, thanks to you, thanks to other friends across the state and the country, and to our faculty and staff who also pitched in to support our students. And so we're highlighting here 5 different student emergency funds, 2 of which are in the graduate school and international education. So within international education at the grad and undergrad level, we raised over $14,000 to support students. And in the Needy Family Graduate Student Emergency Fund, we raised over $7,000 for students, okay? So this benefited, as of June 30th, 172 students. We got money from 89 first-time donors, which is very exciting. 401 gifts from 30 different states and 3 countries abroad. But let me just tell you, for these 2 accounts, okay, since the end of March until about the end of July, we gave out over 100 different support to over 100 different students, totaling close to $30,000. And these gifts were not big necessarily. In fact, most of these gifts were about $250 a piece. We would normally give out more, but recognizing that we were going to be flooded with requests, we wanted to help more students with smaller amounts, and that's what we chose. And these are for emergencies. So this fund would not support what would be considered, a student should consider that they need to just be prepared to pay. So in other words, if they're paying tuition, that isn't an emergency. They should be prepared to pay that. But many students lost jobs. They incurred additional expenses because of the coronavirus. And so where possible, they received some emergency funding. And this was really valuable to our international students because the federal CARES money that we received as an institution, international students were not able to collect and receive any of that money. And many graduate students also were ineligible to receive that because they had not completed the proper financial forms for FAFSA. And so the majority of that money went to well-deserving undergraduate domestic students. But this money in the grad school and international education was really valuable. So thank you so much. Let me give you another success story. So this is Hai Phan, okay? And Hai Phan is from Vietnam. He received an undergraduate degree here from the University of Arkansas in 2005 and went back to Vietnam and worked in the IT field and actually co-founded a company. But he increasingly felt like he could benefit from further education. And so he enrolled in our operations management program, which is a master's degree program. It's our largest graduate program at the university. And he moved himself and his family here back to Fayetteville. And he actually secured a job. And he was working in the area of event planning. But back in March then, when the pandemic hit, he lost his job. And he was faced with finishing school and supporting his family through the rest of the semester. Phan was a recipient of the International Education Catastrophic Fund. And he was very grateful because, again, this provided the financial support that he needed and helped relieve the stress and anxiety that was associated around this loss of his job. So he was featured in one of our recent publications that we sent out to the Alumni Association. So maybe you've seen this already, but you know, we have many, many examples just like Phan's. So I've come to the end of my talk. I am going to kind of switch it over back to the speaker mode, and I will turn on the questions, and Cecilia and Mary Kate, I think, are going to help with questions. And you could put those into the chat. I think that's going to be our preferred mode of getting questions.
Thank you, Dignity. Before we start with questions, I want to thank you and your team for working so hard. You know, one thing is when you hear all the stories and what happened, and then one thing, and another thing is listening to a presentation. Gave me goosebumps because I was seeing on the other end when I was helping my students going back home and helping crying parents and telling them that international office had everything under control, that your team is going to look into every single possibilities, so many moving parts. I think your team, you and your team deserve a standing ovation. If all of us were in the same room, I'll be the first one to stand up and cheer for you guys. And also they deserve a vacation, all expenses paid to a secret destination. That way, you know, we cannot find you for a week, and all the parents are not going to be able to find you for a week.
Cecilia, thank you. Thank you for saying that. I mean, I completely agree. We have just an amazing group of staff in the grad school and international education. And as you know, we all had to start working remotely. And so we were supporting these students while we were working remotely too. And so I am so proud of my team. I just can't thank them enough. And as alumni, you should be so proud of really the support that we've provided to these students. But thank you for saying that.
Yes, no, it was like sometimes parents were texting me at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you know, when you start your day, you forget about everything. So I was texting different people in your team about questions from parents, and I got the answer like 20 minutes after. I was like, no, go to sleep. This is when you start your day, you have to answer. So, but yeah, thank you. On my end, as a Bolivian mother of 75 children here, I thank you, thank your team. I think you did an amazing job. You have everything under control. Some kids are coming back because they trust you, they trust your team, they trust us here at the University of Arkansas, and they're very thankful. They said to thank everyone, and they are appreciated of the funds because some students have to pay, like you said, like the rent or some electrical bills or something. Thanks to you, they were able to pay and leave the United States as soon as they were allowed to go home. So I have some questions while we wait for other people's questions. Please don't be shy. I know you have questions, and the need is going to be able to answer your questions. So talking about all the, the fall semester, will students have a full access to the libraries, labs, and research facilities on campus?
Yes and no. So what has happened, the best practices, as you probably all know, are about wearing a mask, washing hands, and social distancing. And so although on campus we are going to have face-to-face classes, in fact, approximately 60% of our classes will still be face-to-face, but some are going to go remote and some will continue online. But the face-to-face classes are is essentially, let me simplify this. Kind of what we did is we moved small classes into large classrooms so that we could spread out. And we moved medium-sized classes into large classrooms so that we could offer them and spread out. But as you would imagine, if we have 450 students in a class, we don't have a larger classroom. Many of the classes are cut down to about 25% of their former capacity. And so some courses are being offered in a hybrid mode where a third of the class comes on Monday, a different third of the class comes on Wednesday, and a different third of the class comes on Friday. And then when you're not physically in class, you are connecting synchronously remotely. Mullins Library, as an example, normally would have capacity for about 1,500 students, but due to renovations and due to COVID, there are only going to be about 252 students that can be in there in any one time. And so students will have to basically, kind of clock in and clock out, and they're going to not allowed to sit there all day. And so as a campus, we're thinking, where will students go during change of classes? So we're installing, Wi-Fi so that they can, and setting up more tables and things outdoors so that students can be outdoors, or they connect to Wi-Fi or whatever, so that they can continue with their coursework. And, if you think this is odd, we're basically doing what everybody else is doing. I know of no other institution that is offering complete face-to-face, just like pre-COVID. I mean, everybody across the United States is offering things in a similar way that we are. And we benchmark with our peer institutions all the time to kind of look for these best practices. Alicia put a question in the chat, Cecilia, that might be good to, kind of answer now. And she's asking if we anticipate programmatic changes that may need to be address long-term travel complications. And so let me just say this, we've learned a lot about travel, how we book travel, ensuring that everyone understands what their responsibility is, what their commitments are, especially with things when they happen that are within our control or outside of our control, et cetera. And so, yeah, there are changes that are being made really across the campus, and new practices. And, we use this term COVID time. One of the challenges, as you know, is that, we get a whole bunch of smart people in the room and we make a decision, and an hour later, that decision no longer makes sense because something has changed. And so we revisit that decision. So to some people, it seems like we can't make a decision, or that it's a moving target. But because of the spread of the virus, it has been a moving target. So we're doing really our absolute best to try to figure out what is the current best practice and what should we be doing.
And I think we have another answer from Janet, if related to Spring International students, if we had classes during this time.
For Spring International?
Yes.
Yes, so Spring International, they're also really following similar guidelines as we are with physical distancing and masks. But as you may know, Janet, Spring International right now is running a program for all the Fulbright scholars and their pre-departure, and they're doing that all remotely, all virtually. And so where I'm, for example, on Monday, I might have gone and met them and given a welcome address. I recorded a welcome address to them that they could watch. And the other challenge that they're dealing with for this Fulbright program is that for us, we may be giving an address at 8 a.m. and in Rome, that would be 2 p.m. or something like that. And in Asia, that may be 8 p.m. at night or something like that. So they're dealing with the challenges also of all of the different time zones across the world. Keeping us busy.
I got a question for you, Janita, I received. Could you discuss kind of how the Rome Center is pivoting to provide some virtual classes this fall?
Yes, in fact, we will be offering 5 different classes from the Rome Center, from faculty at our Rome Center, that are going to be delivered right here to the Fayetteville campus. And so I'll just say this, our Rome Center and Italy and Rome in itself was ahead of us by 2 weeks to a month. You could almost predict what might be happening in the US 2 weeks later or a month later by watching what was happening in Rome. So they really got a head start. They were asked to help our students complete their spring semester, so the ones that were relocated from the Rome Center back onto campus. Our instructors helped them to finish up the semester so that they could get done. And then they were ahead of us. Francesco Badeschi, who is the director of the Rome Center, would be sending us pictures. Here's what the classrooms look like now. We've removed chairs, we've separated them, they're 6 feet apart. Here we are wearing masks. They went around with like a GoPro kind of camera to provide tours for students. Okay, here's a tour. We're walking down the streets. We're in this museum. This is what you're seeing, to supplement the instruction, where students then would not themselves physically be able to be there. They brought it to them through videos, which have been very, very powerful.
That's great. We have another one from Angela here in the chat, and she says, what a success story. How do you think that these virtual classes are going to impact the student success?
Hey, Angela. She's my Italian sister, my Italian blonde sister. So thanks for being here, Angela. So I am going to think about this in the most positive way that I can. 2020 is going to have an asterisk on it for many, many things. And I hate to think negatively about 2020, because I have some friends who got new grandchildren in 2020, and it's a joyful time for them, right? So I'd like to think of this positive. I can tell you, we are creating a new, much more adaptable and capable group of student learners who are able now to use this technology and assume more responsibility themselves for learning. And this is going to carry them far. We have attended several workshops and seminars by kind of experts in the area, and they really believe that higher education as we know it is pivoting because of the pandemic, and it's going to change. And in a lot of good ways, it is providing more access to students who might not otherwise have access to higher education, because much of higher education was only accessible to people who could physically be at a residential kind of higher learning environment. But now with the offering of more remote options, we've opened it up to people who can't do it, and it can lower the costs. And as we figure out how to do this better and better, the quality actually will continue to improve. So I think that this is going to be a positive for us in the long run. Is it difficult? Yes. Have some people fallen behind? Yes. Are we all learning more? Yes. I can use Zoom, Microsoft Teams, WebEx, Blackboard, Connect. I mean, all of these different softwares now, and so can all of you, and we're very we've learned some new skills, all of us.
Great. Cecilia, do you have any more questions for Dean Needy here?
Yes, I have one more. I think we're about to run out of time, but how are teaching assistants being prepared to handle face-to-face instruction with students?
Okay, so our teaching assistants, really, I would call them junior faculty members. And so similarly to the training and protocols that are being put in place for faculty, they're also being put in place for teaching assistants. So we, as an institution, asked our faculty, are you comfortable teaching face-to-face? Yes or no? If they're not comfortable teaching face-to-face, we provide accommodations for them to teach their course remotely, and similarly for teaching assistants. And so for face-to-face instruction, the students in the class will be physically distanced. Faculty and everybody will be wearing masks. Faculty can wear masks. We can have face shields in addition to that. There's cleaning protocols that are set up in all of the classrooms. So for teaching, whether you're a teaching assistant or whether you're a faculty member, those things are happening. And then whether you're teaching remotely, let's say, our teaching faculty support center has been amazing, and they have put together so many wonderful resources for our faculty and our teaching assistants so that they can really improve their skills, learn best practices, how to create the syllabus, what will attendance look like, how do I prepare a test, how do I engage people who are remote instead of on campus. And so I think our teaching assistants will also be in great shape, as well as the faculty for this fall. 11 more days, people. I'm telling you, 11 more days.
I think we had Julie Olson put in the chat here. She said she encourages everyone to watch the videos of the tour of the Rome Center that they've produced during the pandemic, and she put the link in there. So feel free to view that as well. That'd be great. But Cecilia, did you have any more questions?
No, I think I have 1,000 questions, but
Right. Well, Dean Needy, do you have any words that you want to close us out with here?
Yes, I just want to say, I'm not an alumnus from the University of Arkansas, but as Cecilia said, my husband is, my oldest son is, and my younger son, he's going to be coming here. And as I tell anyone I meet, I can't think of a greater way to tell you how much pride I have in this institution than my own family members are coming here. And I'm just more and more impressed every day with our faculty and our staff and our students. I mean, everybody I feel like has stepped up to the challenges, and it's hard. I'm not going to say it's not hard. People are working really, really hard, but we're going to make it. We'll come out on top because we're Razorbacks and we're strong. So go Razorbacks, go Hogs.
Thank you so much. I totally agree. But I want to thank everyone for coming today. We really appreciate you joining us, and 1,000 thanks to Cecilia and Dean Needy for hosting for us today. We really appreciate you all taking your time out of the busy schedules I know you have. Like you said, there's 11 days till students come back, so busier than ever right now, I'm sure. But thank you all very much for joining us and sharing some information with us about all y'all are doing to keep our students, staff, and faculty safe. We appreciate you so much. And with that, I'm going to let everyone head out and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you again to Dean Needy and Cecilia.